Let me thank the Center for Popular Democracy Action. Let me thank Rights and Democracy for continuing to do such great grassroots organizing in Vermont. Let me thank Sarah Wanderville and the Vermont Coalition for Disability Rights, but mostly, let me thank a true American hero, Addie Barkan, for all that he has done. Now, Addie has kind of given my speech. I'll try to fill in a few of the details. And I think the first point that has to be made, and it has to be made loudly and clearly, that Addie believes, that you believe, and I believe, that the time is long overdue, where the United States will not continue to be the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a right. And that's kind of what we're here to discuss today. But before we do that, I want to pick up on Addie's point and tell you what all of you already know, is that everything is connected to everything else. And in the last several years, what some of us have been trying to do is to wage a political revolution in this country which transforms not only the politics of America, but the economics as well. And the good news is that despite obstacles and enormous opposition along the way, we are making enormous progress, and in fact, the political revolution is sweeping across this country. Ideas that we have talked about for years, I think many people in Vermont have heard me talk about for years. Others have been talking about it all over the country. Ideas which a few years ago seem to be fringe ideas or extremist ideas or unpopular ideas are now ideas firmly rooted in the mainstream of American political dialogue. A few years ago, some of us said, you know, American democracy is what we do in Vermont every March at town meetings, where people come together and one person has one vote. American democracy is not billionaires like the Koch brothers and others buying elections. And all over this country, interestingly enough, whether you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, Progressive, Conservative, people understand that we cannot continue to have a corrupt campaign finance system that allows billionaires to buy elections. Together, we are going to overturn Citizens United. And all across this country, again, regardless of one's political views, people understand that the grotesque level of income and wealth inequality that exists in this country is not only immoral, it is just very bad economics. We cannot continue to have a situation where 3 people in this country, 1, 2, 3 people, own more wealth than the bottom half of America. We cannot continue a situation where one guy, the wealthiest person on earth, sees his wealth increase by $275 million every single day. And that same person, Mr. Bezos of Amazon, pays many of his workers wages that are so low that you are forced to subsidize them when they go on food stamps and Medicaid and subsidized housing. And all across this country, people are saying to the owners of Walmarts, to the owners of Amazon and McDonald's and Burger King, pay your wages, pay your workers a livable wage, $15 an hour. A few years ago, that idea of $15 an hour seemed to be just an extreme idea. But I want all of you to know that all across this country, states and communities are passing legislation for $15 an hour. The Vermont state legislature passed it, and we need a governor who's going to sign that bill. And when we talk about the major issues facing our country, more and more people and more mayors and local officials and governors all across this country understand that it is unfair to working families, unfair to the future of our country, when hundreds of thousands of young people cannot afford to go to college because their incomes are too low, or others leave school $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 in debt. And the idea, which a few years ago seemed to be a radical idea, unacceptable idea, of making public colleges and universities tuition free, is now an idea being talked about all over this country. And people understand that instead of having Trump and his Republican friends give huge tax breaks to the wealthiest people in this country, to the largest corporations, such that 83% of all of the tax breaks in the Republican bill go to the top 1%. People understand that is exactly the opposite of what we should be doing amidst so much wealth and income inequality in America today. Our job is to demand that the millionaires, the billionaires, and large private corporations start paying their fair share of taxes. All of which brings me to the issue we are here today to discuss, and that is the healthcare crisis in America. In the United States of America, we should not have 30 million people who have zero health insurance, and that number is growing. We should not be having even more than 30 million who are underinsured with co-payments and deductibles that will often keep them from going into the doctor's office because they just cannot afford to pay those co-payments or deductibles. We are losing in this country many thousands of people every single year who do not go to the doctor when they should because they either have no health insurance or they can't afford the co-payments or the deductibles that they have to pay. We should not be living in a nation today where we have the insane situation of 1 out of 5 Americans who receive a prescription from their doctor not being able to fill that prescription because they cannot afford the outrageously high prices of prescription drugs in America today. We should not be living in a nation where if you are wealthy, your life expectancy will exceed people who are poor by 10, 15, or 20 years. The length of our life should not be dependent upon our incomes. So we have two fundamental issues, I think, that motivate us when we talk about healthcare. First, of course, is the profound moral issue, which says that everybody in this country, whether you're rich, whether you're poor, whether you're black, whether you're white, whether you live in a rural community, live in an urban community, that if you live in America, you are entitled to health care because you are a human being. Again, this is not a radical idea. This concept of healthcare as a right and not a privilege exists in every other major country on earth. And all we are trying to do right now is say that if Canada and Germany and the UK and Scandinavia and every other major country on earth can provide healthcare to all people as a right, we're damn well sure that the United States of America can do the same. So the first issue is a moral issue. Healthcare for all is a moral right, but the second issue really is an economics issue. And that is to make it clear that we have the most wasteful, bureaucratic, dysfunctional, and expensive healthcare system on earth. And that not only from a moral perspective, but from an economic perspective, we cannot continue to spend the huge amounts of money that this dysfunctional healthcare system is gobbling up. There is no reason why in the United States we are spending almost twice as much per capita on healthcare as do the people of any other country. A recent OECD report came out. The United States spends $10,348, over $10,000 on every man, woman, and child in this country for healthcare. Canadians spend half of that, $4,800. British spend even less than that, $4,200. Now, why do we spend so much money on healthcare? And the answer is pretty simple. The function of our healthcare system is not to guarantee healthcare to all people in a cost-effective way. That should be the goal of a rational healthcare system. How do we provide healthcare to all of our people in a way that is cost-effective? But in the United States, what we have is a system motivated not by cost-effective healthcare, but by profiteering for the insurance companies and for the drug companies.
Yeah.
And when you have the goal of making profits off of people's sickness, when your goal is not keeping people healthy or treating them in a cost-effective way, you end up spending almost twice as much per capita as any other country. Every American should understand that in 2017, the top 5 health insurance companies made $21 billion in profit. People should also understand, because this is the nature of this system, that the CEOs who run these insurance companies, who run these drug companies, make incredible compensation. The CEO of Regeneron, a fellow named Leonard Schleifer, received $95 million in compensation last year. The CEO of United Health Group received $83 million. The CEO of Aetna received $58 million. The top 5 drug companies in the world made over $50 billion in profit. And we have people in Vermont who cannot afford to go to the doctor, who cannot afford the prescription drugs they desperately need. The function of healthcare is not to make CEOs of insurance and drug companies much richer. It is to provide healthcare to all of our people. And more Americans understand this. So let me give you some really good news, but tell you what the good news is going to bring forth. Good news is that a few years ago, Medicare for all was seen to be, again, a radical idea outside of the mainstream. But as Adi mentioned, in the Senate and in the House, more and more people are coming on board. 3 years ago, I introduced Medicare for all in the United States Senate, and I had one really, really good senator on board, That was me. That was it. Last time I introduced the bill this year, we had 16 co-sponsors. In the House, there are over 120 members of Congress on board Medicare. But more importantly, every single poll that comes out shows that a strong majority of the American people understand that Medicare is working well for seniors, and there's no reason why we should not expand it to cover all of our people. Last poll that I saw on this issue had 63% of the American people supporting a Medicare for all single-payer program. So the good news is that we are making enormous progress, but obviously these folks who make tens and tens of millions of dollars in salary, Wall Street, and the people who earn huge profits off of the healthcare system, they are not happy about the momentum for a Medicare for all. So what are we seeing? Just the other day, literally a couple of days ago, it was announced that there's going to be a new group of drug companies and insurance companies who are going to spend a god-awful amount of money trying to persuade the American people that Medicare for all is a bad idea. Last week, there was a study that came out from a Koch brothers funded organization called the Mercatus Center, talking about how much money Medicare for all will cost. And what they're trying to do there is to confuse the American people. So let me be as clear as I can be on this issue. Interestingly enough, this Koch brothers funded study itself was forced to acknowledge that a Medicare for all system over a 10-year period would save this country $2 trillion in healthcare expenses. And the reason for that, obviously, is we save billions of dollars on administrative costs, on advertising, on all of the bureaucracy that is now involved in a for-profit healthcare system. But what our opponents will do is they will say to the American people, you are going to be paying more in taxes. What they forget to tell the American people is that every person in this country is going to have comprehensive health care and not have to pay any more private insurance premiums, co-payments, or nothing. I think that if you are the average family of 4 in America, let's just say you're self-employed, you are now paying on average $28,000 a year to private insurance companies. The good news is that under a Medicare for all single-payer system, you are going to be paying substantially less for your health care costs. And if you are an employer, you are no longer going to have to pay a significant amount of money for health care for your workers. You're not going to have to spend an enormous amount of time figuring out how you can get cost-effective health care. And if you are a worker in this country, the very good news is that you will now, under Medicare for all, no longer have to stay at a job you do not want to stay at simply because that job provides you with decent health care. That's a big deal. The struggle for Medicare for all has nothing to do with health care. The struggle for Medicare for all has everything to do with the greed of the pharmaceutical industry and the insurance companies. They want more and more. They want to be able to continue to make billions and tens of billions of dollars in profits from human sickness. And our job right now is to stand up and say, no more. We're not going to see people in this country die because they can't afford health care. We're not going to continue to see people go bankrupt because they cannot afford health care. We're not going to see an incredible discrepancy in life expectancy because of the rich and the poor, because poor do not have access to decent health care. The time now, and this time is long overdue, for us to stand up proudly and declare that in Vermont and in every state in this country, health care is a human right. We are prepared to take on the insurance companies, the drug companies, Wall Street, and all of those institutions that profit from the current healthcare system. And we are going to succeed sooner than people believe in creating a Medicare for all healthcare system in this country. Thank you all very much.